morning. How are you?
I'm great.
Hey,
How are you?
can I ask you real quick about the stimulus negotiations? Where do things stand right now? And does the president think to draw a red line when it comes to a payroll tax?
So the president would like a payroll tax. He's made that very clear. The president is poised to sign a Phase 4 package into law if it's reasonable and it meets a lot of demands. Very happy to hear Leader McConnell say a few things. One, that he wants this to benefit lower income Americans. And two, you have many Republicans and Democrats up on Capitol Hill agreeing that we have to have more money for education funding. Now, if we do that, we should take a very strong look at the White House's proposal for emergency relief for these schools and also education freedom scholarships, because that disproportionately helps our lower income communities, where we've got about 5 million kids across this country who are in non-public schools roughly, and many of those parents have no certainty right now whether those kids are going to be able to go back to school because they may not be able to afford it. They've lost their jobs too. They're not in jobs that could be where they can telecommute, etc. They're taking other jobs. But while you as a parent want to know that your child can return safely, you also want peace of mind that where they work, the continuity can be there because you have money for that education. So 10%, we're looking at 10% of the money pretty much going to non-public schools, education freedom scholarships. $13 billion or so has already been invested in the schools, but I think to make sure the schools have what they need to safely reopen and to make sure that all the schools, public and non-public, can also receive their kids safely, we'd look at that as well. So I think there'll be what I'm happy about, what I feel really bullish on, if I can, Mark, is that this last CARES Act had very little dissent. There were a few people like AOC said, I'm not going to vote for her. Nobody followed her off that silly cliff. So you had overwhelmingly bipartisan, bicameral support, and we would expect if the pieces are in there, we'd have it again. I hope the Democrats, who don't seem to show up for work very often, if I guess they're at home, but whatever they're doing these days, I hope they're really sharpening up the pieces of this package, and that will benefit low-income Americans. It'll keep our humming economy along, and it really should focus on these kids, because we don't want these kids to be forgotten any longer.
And one follow-up just on that, just on the stimulus, it's just the unemployment insurance. Is the White House support a specific number that would extend either the $600, $400 extra per month or week?
We're looking at that. I mean, again, we are going to see what Congress negotiates. We certainly have leaned all the way in terms of the president saying this is what's important to keep the economy humming, to keep these businesses online, literally and figuratively, small business formation, consumer confidence, but also maybe some of those constituencies that didn't benefit the first couple times around and need a big boost. We're also continuing to reimburse the hospitals, which is important too, through the CARES Act. It's over $100 billion. I know there are other hospitals that were not specifically COVID committed, but they reconstituted, say, their ICU unit or their operating rooms or their emergency rooms to help with COVID patients. They also are looking for some help as well, and I know HHS is on top of that, just as another example. Weijia? Oh, that's a personal decision. I don't know what Barron School has decided, and I certainly don't know what the first couple has decided with respect to their teenage son, who I believe is entering high school this year. I have 2 kids in Maryland also in private schools, and I think we're just waiting to see what those schools say. So far, we're told we're going back in a school not far away from his, the end of August, and we're waiting to see if that happens. And I think that we also recognize that not all school districts are the same. I mean, not all the hot spots are the same. So there is no one size fits all, except to say that what we do know about kids is that on balance, they thrive better when they're in a structured, safe environment like our schools, our school days. We certainly know the statistics where the mental health services, the child abuse reporting, the meal delivery, the ability to interact with an adult eyeball to eyeball, and then of course to get a quality education, all are done better in person in the classroom or outside. I think some of these places are getting, I was with Secretary DeVos in my office last night for quite a while talking about some of the best practices we're hearing from around the country. Some folks are saying, let's just do more outside instruction, get the kids with nature, also, you know, maybe 3 days on, 2 days off. But these parents need certainty also. The president is successfully being the president of the Forgotten Man, Forgotten Woman, but also the forgotten child very much in our sight. So I think you'll continue to hear from this White House, Wasia, about how to safely reopen the schools. But we also want to hear from the school districts because they are making the decision also. I think there should be more money going to education if the Republicans and Democrats agree for that. It just can't go to the teachers' unions so they can run ads against Donald Trump. That's not what it is. It has to go in the classroom, follow the student, and make sure that he or she has the money they need to get this quality education. Kelly?
You are advocating for the president to be more front and center again on updating the nation, briefing the nation on coronavirus. Why do you believe that, and why is he not doing it?
Well, I believe it because the pandemic continues and he's done a solid job leading our country through it. His approval rating on the pandemic was higher when he was at the podium. It was 51% in March. And I think people want to hear from the President of the United States. He still addresses it. He still talks about vaccine and therapeutics development. He still talks about how he talked yesterday at a DREG event, for example, Kelly, that everybody who needed a ventilator got a ventilator. That's huge, and we're now sharing them with other countries. We've surged the supply in our strategic national stockpile so that we have tens and tens of thousands of ventilators in case, God forbid, they're needed, especially in some of these new hotspots. We're giving the testing capacity and the media, as you call it, not you, but the media for the testing capacity, the testing materials, to the governors who are asking for it and the county officials who are asking for it. We've surged so many supplies, literally tens and tens, hundreds of millions of PPE and masks and N95 respirators and the like. So I just think the people want to hear from the President of the United States. Doesn't have to be daily, doesn't have to be for 2 hours, but in my view, it has to be.
And is he hesitant to do that? Because typically he sets that agenda.
He's not hesitant to do that, but also his vice president, his number 2, is the head of the coronavirus task force. It is out there briefing. They've been at HHS, they've been at the Department of Education. They were up there for hours on end, and they included the scientists and the doctors and the other members of the task force, like Secretary Carson, Secretary of Labor Scalia, Secretary Mnuchin has been available. So those are also working on the economic pieces as well. But I think it's causation, not coincidence, that the president's handling of the coronavirus was higher in public opinion when he himself was addressing. Again, don't need anybody up there for 2 hours, but there he was with his doctors, and everybody was answering questions and presenting information when the news was very dire and very sad every day. I'm sure you felt the same way about the devastating news. The deaths were 2,000, 2,500. We're nowhere near that, thank God, and every death is a tragedy. But having the president, and when he's asked that question, he answers it readily when it's asked about it. But and he's doing an interview with Fox News Channel's Chris Wallace for the Sunday show, I think for the full hour. So maybe he'll be asked about this and he'll answer it there too. Joe?
Kellyanne, there's a new document out. It says essentially that 18 states are in the red zone. It apparently was written around the 14th of the month. And it was never published according to the Center for Integrity, Center for Public Integrity. Why aren't documents like that publicly released? Is the White House afraid of information like that getting out?
No, the White House is not afraid of information. I think we see the surge in cases and we know where the hot spots are. We've been very upfront about that. We publish many documents. Obviously, the CDC and NIH also lead in that regard in terms of talking about vaccine development and the CDC guidelines, et cetera. They're still the government agency for infectious diseases, as is NIH-AID. So those two doctors, Fauci and Redfield, are out there. They answer questions when they're asked. I don't know about that particular document, and respectfully, the Center for Public Integrity is an outside organization that I'm sure doesn't support the president's reelection. They're going to say, we're not political. Good luck, and neither is Planned Parenthood, I'm sure. But and a lot of your polling, but meaning all of you. But I haven't seen, I don't know which document you're referring to. I only read about it, so I'd have to really take a look at that. But we release documents every day with respect to the coronavirus, and I'm not afraid of getting the information out there. I'm actually arguing that information is an elixir, and information is power for the citizenry, and I think they should have more of it. If it's factual and it's evidence, and I don't know that document is. I don't know that went through staff secretary or legal review or health review. So I'd really have to take a look at that and talk to the doctors. I haven't talked to them yesterday or today, any of them. Jordan?
Kellyanne, the Vice President said last week...
One more time.
The Vice President said last week there would be this updated guidance for schools reopening. Mm-hmm. Are we still expecting to see that this week? And if not, why is there a delay?
It could be this week or early next week, and I happen to know that firsthand. So it'd be this week or early next week, along with additional White House events with respect to, or activities, engagements with respect to how to safely reopen schools.
Okay, and when's the last time the president went to one of these coronavirus task forces?
He was there with the governors not too long ago. I remember sitting in there. But remember, the head of the task force is the vice president, who, like the president, is on the ballot, is constitutionally elected. I mean, he chose his number 2 to head up the whole thing because he takes it so seriously. That's also why he banned travel from China, even though Joe Biden was calling it xenophobic and unnecessary, as were many others, frankly, on your network and elsewhere. And that really saved a lot of lives. It's too bad that New York and California and places like that stayed open too long, because that sort of mitigated, especially in New York City, where the mayor was, working out and taking the subway and giving restaurant and theater advice, which is so weird, in early March. But he's a weird guy doing terrible things, for the city where all 4 of my children were born, which we called home for a while, so that's sad. But anyway, one thing I would say, Jordan, if you could just get your pollsters who were dead wrong in 2016 to stop surveying only 24% Republicans. This country is not made up of likely voters that are 24% Republican, so if you skew the sample that way, you're going to get the skewed results you got in 2016 when your poll in late October 2016 showed Hillary 50, Trump 38. I actually was at ABC News the next day with Jason Miller and with Eric Trump. It wasn't Brad Parscale, as Jonathan Karl incorrectly notes in his books. I know how important the facts are to you guys. Fact check. But we told them we didn't believe the poll, and I thanked them for the poll because I knew it would tighten, and by that Friday it had. It was a 1-point race, and we got to say, yay, we're surging. Just get the sample right so that people don't breathlessly say, oh my God, Joe Biden's winning by 65 points when the sample is 34% Democrat, 24% Republican. It's not fair. It's not scientific. It's not legitimate. Let's not go down this path before. Again, I see other polls, NBC News, Wall Street Journal, 26% Republican, thanks for being 2% better. Also not true. Fox News, somebody else's poll, Quinnipiac, 24%. We're just not being honest with the American people when that's done.
Kellyanne, as a pollster, to follow up on that, what demographic are you looking at? Are you most interested in
Oh, me always, many demographics. Well, first of all, I was going to tweet it out, but I'll wait for the anniversary of it. It was actually a CNN article, but he no longer works there, Joe. Don't worry. You're an old timer. I coined the term the hidden Trump voter in 2016 to international and national derision and ridicule. And it was like, ha, ha, ha. Walter Mondale said the same thing, and I think they'll still be hidden on Election Day. That's a real thing. And I think it's more real than ever. And it's going to look demographically even different this time than last time, because people are being silenced everywhere they go. They can't even have a conversation about politics without somebody in their circle of life, a friend, a family member, a colleague, a coworker, somebody at their place of work, place of worship, at the bus stop, in the coffee shop. You can't even disagree with people without them coming in so hot and so full of rage. It's not worth it to you. And that's why your vote is private. It's why you go into the ballot box by yourself, or you seal the envelope and put the stamp on it and go. So I suspect, in fact, I'm pretty confident, that the president calls them a silent majority. That's a more eloquent way of saying hidden Trump voter. But they were real in 2016. There will be real. There was not a single hidden Hillary voter in all of the United States of America. They were all out and about. And the deplorables and irredeemables, as she called tens of millions of Americans, made sure that their voice, you're welcome to go, their voice was heard, and that their vote counted, and they'll be there again. And I think you're helping, honestly, sometimes to suppress and silence them by not really welcoming a rigorous debate. Barry Weiss, the now departed opinion writer at the New York Times, basically said what I've been saying for 5 years, which is Twitter is not an editor. Twitter is not a reporter. Why if you couldn't get it past an editor's desk in print or even on TV, as anti-Trump as some of the coverage can be, then you sure the hell shouldn't be able to put it on Twitter.
Secretary Mnuchin said this month he's also going to, are we still on track for the stimulus bill this month? And also, why are Democrats so skittish about the payroll tax?
Well, they're skittish about anything that seems to help small businesses, employers, middle-class income Americans, lower-income Americans. They should realize that a payroll tax cut helps those businesses, helps job creators, job holders, and job seekers all at the same time. So everybody should be for that. That should not be a partisan issue at all. And it's actually a modest one. It's a $600 payroll cut, or excuse me, it's pretty modest payroll tax cut is what I should say for most businesses. Let me correct myself. We hope it passes this month. Like you, we're here every day. Congress is not. And it's very frustrating to us, but it's very frustrating to the American people. I think it's why Congress's Democratic-led Congress's approval rating is way down. Because, I mean, Nancy Pelosi gets dressed up with nowhere to go twice a week and comes out with the mask and the matching suit and talks about Donald Trump and doesn't get anything done. No joke. And that concerns me because I'm just one small molecule in this world. And I personally know people who are in need, who are suffering, who want to get those jobs that are coming back, who want to have certainty about the kids in school or the tuition assistance that they've been relying upon all along, or the opportunity scholarships or vouchers for school choice they've been relying upon, and they don't have that certainty. So Congress needs to get back to work and get this done.
The Democrats are telling the delegates to their convention that they should do their business remotely this year.
I bet.
Including members of Congress.
Including their candidate.
Well, is there any concern over here at the White House that Republicans who are delegates going to the convention, especially members of Congress, could get sick and end up, not being able to vote or whatever?
Joe, I'm concerned about anybody getting sick. Every death to me is a tragedy, and there's no doubt about that. But that is not why the Democratic National Convention is changing to all online. Well, but you mentioned the Democratic National Convention. It's because they got a candidate they didn't want, who doesn't match this moment, who took 1 year to become the front runner again and had to plow through, not that he did it very effectively or quickly, but he had to succeed 25 other Democrats who did not want him to be the nominee. And now they're facing the need to put him up on a stage to read from a teleprompter, not with people sitting in those weird circles, like bales of hay. It's very strange, but in front of an actual convention. So sure, we're all concerned about health. There's no question of well-being and safety. But one thing I will tell you, I notice without even looking, so if you look, you're really going to see it. These same people who can't come and show up to work, they're out jogging, they're at the nail salon, let's go have a beer, let's go have a meal outside, pushing the baby stroller, chatting it up with no masks. They're in Nantucket, they're in Martha's Vineyard, they're in their districts. If you can do that, if you can go sit in a nail salon or have a beer, you can sure the hell show up to work here in Washington, D.C. on behalf of the American people. There are 435 members of Congress, 535 if you count the Senate, in this country, representing a country of 340 million people. Get back to work. And so I'm going to start seeing all the people, because you're here every day in heels and suits and dresses and the like we are. What is so difficult about this?
But in Jacksonville and in Charlotte to a lesser extent, are you guys even concerned about the possibility that delegates who are members of Congress could get sick in the crowd and then not be able to do any business?
Well, I'm concerned about all delegates, no matter what their job is and who they are. I mean, my concern is for everyone. And I think people will make those decisions. Also, I saw this week, and I was on the phone yesterday with Ronna McDaniel in my personal capacity on my personal phone, so calm down, that I was talking to her about Jacksonville and about Charlotte, because I'm trying to help with some of the content, et cetera, and in my personal capacity. I'll be doing it all weekend in my personal capacity, outside by my pool. And so you're welcome to come. So anyhow, we talked about different things that they're doing, and I think they made that public yesterday. The temperature checks, the mask wearing, maybe outdoors for some of the events, like all of that is being considered. But the Democrats just went and said, we only want 300 people. We went from 50,000 to 300, which, as I just noted, is legitimately a small second wedding where I come from. It is not a national convention, and it's not the way we should be electing our presidents.
How important are the debates, given that Joe Biden hasn't been on the trail as much? Are you all looking forward to the debates, and do you think that the president will have to use a different strategy than he used in 2016 against Hillary Clinton?
So some of it is the same from 2016. It's good that Bill Stepien's there and Brad Parscale's still involved, and those of us who were by the president's side in 2016 are still by the president's side, working on policy here at the White House. Some of it's the same, some of it's very different. And I think that everybody takes Donald Trump more seriously now because they said he could never be president, and he actually is the president. But at the same time, I already see the skewed polls. I already see the underestimating him. It's over. Underdog telling voters what they should think, what's important to them, how to think, how to vote, how to act, what to believe. People don't like that. And so they will rebel against that in the ballot box or in their absentee or mail-in voting, believe me. Well, here's what I would say about the 2016 race that is still the same. There is still this fiction of electability. You can win, you can't win. We replaced that in 2016 with a focus on the Electoral College, which is how you do or don't win. And that worked. And I was very public about it every single day. I have a living, breathing video catalog. I know others absolutely knew he was going to win, but I can't find the tweet, the text, the email, or the media appearance. But I'm still looking if you guys want to help at all in your personal capacity. So some of that's still the same. Survivor, he's going to go visit the states. Joe Biden is going to be out in the campaign trail less than Hillary Clinton was, which is pretty remarkable because she took 5 days off for the last debate. I don't know what she was doing, but she wasn't 5, 6, 7 stops a day like Trump and Pence were. Taking that case directly to the people, doing regional and local media in those counties, in those states, which really helped them. And as for the debates, I was the only female, I was the only woman in the debate prep for all 4 debates, including the vice president debate in 2016. And we'll see who's involved this time because Victory has a lot of fathers and mothers. But, pardon?
Sorry.
But I'm telling you, he was so on it last time, and he will be so on it this time because this time it's a president who's going to talk about his vision for the second term, but also his accomplishments in the first term. When he turned to Hillary Clinton in that final debate in Las Vegas on October 19, 2016, and told her something that, frankly, I couldn't get any of my pro-life conservative candidates to say for decades. And it was his idea, and he came and he said, no, you're the extremist on abortion. You would rip that baby out of its mother's womb an hour before it was born. And the country went, ooh. And I thought, great. Stuff like that, putting the onus on her, which is absolutely the case. They are the extremists on abortion. Look at the Democratic Party platform. Even if they have 300 people there, read every word of their party platform. It's abortion anyone, anytime, anywhere, at a time when we know the fetal development starts so much earlier, when we know you can detect a heartbeat, when we know you can know the sex of the baby, when we know the fetus feels pain early on, when we know you can do in utero surgery to correct these pre-birth maladies and have a successful pregnancy and a birth and a healthy child. We know some children are surviving out of the womb 23, 22 weeks at some. I've met some of them. We know people survive abortions. And in other words, we know so much now. And yet you have a Democratic Party platform that, like its presidential nominee, is so out of touch with science and reality and really the party and the culture. So that will be talked about in the debates. President Trump took on Hillary Clinton in all 3 debates. She looked like it was an indignity to share the stage with him. And he beat her every single time because she didn't take him seriously. Now, she's a better debater than Joe Biden. Donald Trump's a better debater than Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden. But Hillary, give her due. She's still fighting the last war, but she's a much better debater than Joe Biden. How do we know that? Well, we don't know that because we've seen Joe Biden debate anytime soon. And the last 2 presidential runs, he got about 1%. I'm being nice. I'm rounding up. He got 1%, so he didn't debate anybody except the man in the mirror. So the only reason we know he's not going to be a good debater is because he's not very fluid with a teleprompter and 50 people sitting in circles. So you sure the heck can be assured he's not going to be a good debater against Donald Trump. And the other reason is, unlike President Trump, Joe Biden's just not his own man right now. It's really sad to see this guy being yanked around by different elements of a party, especially when he beat all those people and those ideas in the primaries, that he now would be palling around with these people, Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, AOC, and adopt the ideas that he defeated in the primaries. It's very odd. Usually in a general election, they try to be more moderate and go to the middle. He's actually done the opposite. And that's how you lose an election.
Have you heard anything in the personal capacity about when the president may be resuming the campaign schedule? The rally in New Hampshire, obviously we all thought last weekend. We thought maybe this weekend. Any sense of?
I love the president's official events, so I think when he goes out, he was in Georgia this week, 2 days ago, and talking about NEPA. That may sound just like, yeah, another government acronym, but it's so meaningful, Mark, to so many Americans who are so frustrated by consumer irritants like traffic and congestion and potholes and bridges and roads in disrepair. So usually that falls to the state and local governments, no doubt, but the federal government has a role in that. And he was there to talk about that. Hey, folks, this is infrastructure. Hey, folks, we should not be behind in years and in some cases decades on our infrastructure and our roads and our bridges. And I think NEPA is a big deal. When the president does dereg events like yesterday and you bring 3 people up to the microphone, nobody cares with their politics. I have no idea how they voted or if they voted at all. No idea. Was he not supposed to have a person from New Jersey because, quote, the political people say it's not a swing state? Who cares? The guy said, thanks for dereg, because my grandfather's business, Cambria, that he started, I can continue because of the dereg. And he had somebody there who had suffered under the ridiculous WOTUS rule, Waters of the United States. I mean, it's like POTUS and VPOTUS and SLOTUS and FLOTUS, and we have WOTUS. It needs, Waters of the United States was so important that it had its own rule, its own acronym like that. It was hurting property owners. And you had a guy there yesterday talking, you had governors talking about dereg, you had the president talking about telehealth, telemedicine, which has been a huge boon. Seema Verma, the head of CMS, told me yesterday, we're now up to, gosh, it's millions and millions. I think she said about 13 million, or we had 13,000 seniors before doing telemedicine. We now literally have tens of millions, and we want to make that permanent. Why in the world would anybody be against seniors being able to access, and rural Americans being able to access health appointments and medical care safely through the comfort and safety and privacy of their homes? That's been working well through COVID for many of them, and not just on COVID-related matters, really on most other things like their medications, and you're in there by yourself. Are you eating properly? Are you safe? Do you need anybody to come and do a wellness check? We're going to deliver your meals, etc. So that's dereg, and that's a very successful dereg also.
I don't mean to be rude, but again, on the campaign schedule, any sense of when that would be?
I don't know about the rallies. I also think it's incredibly important to acknowledge and appreciate that there are voters who will do anything for Donald Trump who may never come to a rally until they get a vaccine. And that's fine. They're going to be there for him. They can spend that time, instead of going to a rally, they can spend that time working over their neighbors and their circle of life. Like, don't believe the nonsense. This guy's done a great job, and here's why I'm going to vote for him, and here's why you should too. That's the best thing ever. Person to person, word of mouth, having a 7-second answer, a 70-second answer, a 7-second answer, why I support him. So the folks who would go to rallies can be spending their time doing that.
Have you done research to inform that opinion that there are some supporters who won't go because of concerns?
Have I done research?
Or
well,
has the
In your personal capacity.
you know what I mean. Have you accessed specific information?
I think Tulsa made that very clear in many ways. There were other problems with Tulsa, as I'm told, and I think it's pretty obvious, but I think that it also made clear that people who really want to support the president by saying, I'm coming to the Tulsa rally, or you've got my support, they're showing their support that way, are not going to come to a rally, but they're going to come to the voting booth. And they're going to be there to put a sign in the yard, or organize, or give $50 to the campaign or the RNC, or both. They're going to be there telling everybody, look, you don't like the tone of the tweets once in a while? Terrific. But if you like the tone of the tweets, wait till you live under socialism. You're really not going to like socialism.
One more thing. Should the White House be doing periodic acknowledgments of those who have died because of COVID in some sort of a memorial type way? Some other countries are doing days of mourning. I know we've got a long way to go in this, but we haven't seen much of that other than a verbal acknowledgement. Should there be periodic days of mourning for those who have succumbed?
Well, this president has said every death is a tragedy. I mean, somebody asked him in the briefing room one day how many deaths is, and he said, what? Who asked that kind of question? 0. I want 0 deaths. So obviously, we are all grief-stricken for the death and devastation. There's no question. And we acknowledge that readily. Also have talked to a number of the different families. Healthcare and other first responders have done a masterful job all throughout this, and we'll continue to do that. So I know what you're talking about has been discussed as well, and we'll continue to do that.
The critique on the president and the event just yesterday,
From?
and some of the other events.
From who?
Well, just generally.
No, not just generally, but okay.
You hear it on TV, for example.
We do hear it on CNN.
That the president is not doing coronavirus events. He's doing other things.
That's not true. Yes, I'm sorry. I'm going to disabuse you.
Avoiding doing coronavirus events at the bottom.
No, he's not avoiding that. In fact, because of this president, we have tens of thousands of ventilators in the strategic national stockpile. Because of this president, no American that needed a ventilator, including in New York, where the governor demanded 40,000, we sent him 12,000. Pardon? Well, everyone who needed a ventilator got a ventilator. I don't know what decisions were being made. If governors weren't asking us, if they were preening at press conferences or didn't have control over their hospitals to ask, how many do you have, how many do you need, and telling us. But hold on, part of the dereg is telemedicine. Sorry, part of the dereg is prescription drugs. Part of the dereg, telemedicine has been huge in the face of coronavirus.
The dereg started at the beginning of the administration.
Right, but remember, it's not just WOTUS, it's not just property, it's not just business, it's not just small business. It's also public school parents who want to get their kids back in school. It's also telemedicine, like breaking down these regulations. FEMA probably blew through a lot of regulations to get the vaccines, and the therapeutics would not be running at full force right now, Joe, in an unprecedented fashion were it not for deregulation, were it not for busting through some of those rules and regulations. The FDA, NIH, I suppose, but definitely the FDA. I mean, Commissioner Hahn has talked about this. So there's deregulatory action in the face of this global pandemic that has made a difference and saved lives and mitigated a lot of damage.
But Kellyanne, you've alluded to the fact that there are some in this White House who are advising the president against holding these coronavirus-focused events. Are those advisors making a mistake?
I think it's important for the country to hear from President Trump, and he's not afraid to give a message of any kind, as you know. So when you ask him questions about this, he answers you. He answers you. He doesn't say, oh, wait, no, Mike, where's the vice president? And, of course, we've had the briefings at also, I mean, look, the doctors are out there all the time. Dr. Fauci was at Georgetown yesterday, the day before. He's on Facebook. He's speaking readily. And I think one of the best things NIH and CDC can do right now for the country, including the guys at the top, is really crowing about this new report that this 45-person trial by Moderna and NIH has been successful in terms of the antibody going into your bloodstreams, the vaccine development, because next week, July 27th, a week or so, 10 days, July 27th, it's going to be 30,000 people. So everybody should be happy, whether you give it its due in your coverage or not. Everybody should be really pleased at information like that. And the president should be talking about it. Staffers should be talking about it. Obviously, the doctors should be talking about it. So the president's not afraid to answer any question. My whole point is his approval in the pandemic was higher when he was speaking. I don't think anybody needs to be up there for 2 hours. It could be 20 minutes, it could be 30 minutes, it could be 2 questions, it could be no questions, respectfully, as long as the information is being delivered.
So is it self-sabotage that he's not looking
No,
at
I wouldn't say that. No, not for him. He feels like he answers the questions. Mario?
I mean, did other advisors tell him, hey, you should not have these daily briefings anymore?
I won't speak about what my colleagues say. I can only speak for myself. I don't think there need to be daily in 2 hours. But the president still answers. Pardon? Yeah, but you guys were sitting, at least. I mean, you were sitting, socially distanced, but seated on your phones. That was a feat of, honestly, that was a pretty good feat. I don't know if I could. I couldn't do it in heels anyway, but Dr. Burks did. And
so when will we see that first event?
Well, I don't know, but he obviously answered.
We'll be here tomorrow and available.
I'll pass that on.
What would you envision next week, though?
Pardon me?
What would you envision next week?
Oh, I don't know about that. I mean, obviously the president said he's going to do healthcare soon. He's doing education, reopening the schools. I mean, that is coronavirus related. He's talking about immigration. He's going to have another event about the suburbs, which is, all of that is coronavirus plus. Mario?
And last question, Kellyanne. Is this kind of like a runway to outline what the president's second-term agenda is? Some of these events that are on the table?
Yes, but I think the president has made clear what his vision is, and every president gets elected, reelected or not, based on their accomplishments in office, and then also the case they're making for the next 4 years. Why we can't interrupt the progress that's being made, the best economy that he built, and he's the only guy who can really reduce it. Contrast that this week, and all elections, are choices and contrast. I cannot think of a bigger contrast. Even Hillary Clinton, I was out there every day showing the contrast. Hey guys, we have a choice. It's this is that you're not shopping the Soviet Safeway, folks. You have a choice here, and this is what it is. And now you have a bright line contrast, because Joe Biden's tax plan he released this week objectively would raise taxes, has a twice the number of Hillary Clinton, $4 trillion. An effective tax hike on 80% of Americans and businesses, rolling back all the progress. So there will be a contrast, and we will see that. And I think the president will talk about that. He'll talk about how he's the healthcare president in also surging the vaccines and the ventilators, but also surprise medical billing, transparency, insulin being $35 copay maximum for our Medicare Part D seniors, kidney health, transforming the way we deliver kidney health, the associated health plans, really restructuring and helping to strengthen the Obamacare exchanges of all things. Also, I said the associated health plans, but we also had a couple of other measures that helped get healthcare coverage for people who were left out of Obamacare, and they don't get it from their employer, they don't get it from Obamacare, they don't get it from the government, and so giving them other opportunities. I think the short-term limited duration plans is one, for example. So he's been able to do all this on healthcare. I would position him as a healthcare president as well, and ask Joe Biden why the big lie was told right here 10 years ago this past March. You couldn't keep your plan, you couldn't keep your doctor, and no, everybody doesn't have health insurance 10 plus years after Obama-Biden care passed. So, and people, they rely upon their jobs for the health coverage, which is why, and I was part of those discussions, which is why early on in this pandemic, the decision was made to make the testing free for the uninsured and then make the coverage free for the uninsured, the COVID coverage, the COVID health coverage. And then you had the major employers, Blue Cross Blue Shield, Humana, and I think United Healthcare, but you can look it up, came forward too, and they cover about a third of America. And they came forward too and said, we're going to cover the COVID expenses. Things like that are huge. And those stories will be told. Joe Biden can't compete with that. He's just going to say, but Trump. We're going to say, thanks, but Trump did all this. No, but he'll talk about America's place around the globe and how different it was. And China's a big issue. I've seen in lots of different polls recently, more people, particularly women, focus on China than ever before, and they're not happy. They know what happened with the virus. We weren't told the truth. We certainly weren't told the truth by the World Health Organization, which we pay close to $500 million a year to get the truth. The modest return on investment for Americans, ladies and gentlemen, we should all agree, should be getting the truth about a once-in-a-century pandemic like this from the World Health Organization. But they're mad at China. And the president will talk about how he's been the toughest on China. And he will continue to be tough on China. So his renegotiated trade deals, the 200 plus judges on the federal courts, he's going to come out with another list, he says, of Supreme Court justice or a modified list. That was huge in 2016 for him. I know that firsthand. I haven't seen Joe Biden's list, but if you need me to scribble a couple names that I'm confidently sure he may have on the list, he may actually put Hillary Clinton on the list just to get her to stop saying she lost the last election. She's going to lose this one too. P.S. I predict she's not going to win this year either. And so I can imagine who's going to be on. He's going to appoint judges who are just going to make up the law as they go, give in to political pressure, poll numbers, special interest needs. And this president has elevated and confirmed to our federal bench, 200 plus judges who are interpreting the laws it is written, not making up as they go along. So there'll be a great contrast. Thanks so much. Always nice to talk to you. Thank you.
All right, folks, thank you so much for joining us here at Golden State Times. If you guys liked our coverage of Kellyanne Conway, don't forget to share it on social media. Share it on Twitter, Facebook, Parler, Gab, all of those social media sites. If you're new to the channel, we encourage you to subscribe and click that notification bell. Hopefully YouTube notifies you for future live streams. But if you want to get notified 100% of the time for future live streams, all you have to do is text the word Trump Live to the number 555-888. Again, that number is 555-888. So text Trump Live to 555-888 to get notified 100% of the time. Thank you so much for being the best part of Golden State Times. We hope that you subscribe if you are new, and we'll see you very soon.